Okay, thank you very much for asking this question because this is something that's happening currently, okay? So you're being told that Comp Ed will only be looked at when school starts back in the fall and that data will be looked at to see if skills have been lost. However, you're asking for Comp Ed because of the lost 250 hours a week for 2 months in the areas of social emotional behavior, career, vocational, literally got no hours. So there should be no dispute to receiving those hours he was supposed to. Shouldn't we be able to get Comp Ed for not receiving the hours and not necessarily only for the lost skills? And why do we need to wait until the fall to determine this? Summer would be an ideal time to get those lost hours, right? Now, first of all, let me clarify something. Compensatory education for lost time is not going to be an hour for hour. It's just that's just not how we do that. All right, judges will look at it, and there is an equation that they utilize. It's really, the hairs on the back of their neck, and the good argument that somebody like me would make with regards to what they would be entitled to. But there's only so much time in the day, and if your child continues next school year with an IEP, then you've got this conundrum to where they owe your child for lost services in the past, and at the same time they have a requirement to provide your child a free and appropriate public education under the design services for this coming school year. So where are we going to fit all that extra time? And how are we going to fit all that extra time in and have your child not view it as some punishment? Because I run into that all the time. That school isn't necessarily fun to a lot of kids. Therapy isn't necessarily fun to a lot of kids. So you see where it's not necessarily a hour for hour trade-off. All right. Now, I understand where the violation is, and yes, you are absolutely correct. That's why we use summer for compensatory, because that's the most logical time to do it. Now, that brings us to COVID. I love saying it like that. It's like COVID. All right, so COVID-19. I don't know. I'm trying to find a way to dress it up to where it's So that's I'm gonna work on that. Make a few calls. Okay. So what I'm seeing schools doing is the same thing that you brought up. Is that there's been some kind of secret meeting of the grand poobahs that we weren't, meaning the parents weren't invited to, because I'm seeing this across multiple states. All right, so it's not just in one area where I'm seeing the same argument that we're going to make a decision in the fall after we look at the data. Now, why would they be looking at the data? Because they're trying to make a determination of whether regression occurred. Now, why would they be doing that? Well, they're trying to dilute and damage any kind of potential due process case that you have. If you were to file now, they wouldn't have that data, you see, and it would still be based upon that distant learning and that good faith effort and whether or not they were able to feasibly provide this stuff using COVID safe practices during that time period. But see, if you let them wait until the fall in order to obtain their data that they will track, especially with something like that's subjective, like social and emotional learning, they're going to more than likely find that your child did not regress and therefore is not entitled to any compensatory services for that time lost. Guys, this is what they're doing everywhere. They're just kicking the can, bypassing the summer, even though most of the states have allowed for in-person services to resume. I can't say that they're out money. I mean, hell, Alabama, for example, actually increased their school budget for this next fiscal year. They didn't go down. So then you have all the savings that the schools had for not, bus transportation, food costs, lights. I mean, granted, I understand that there was also some extra money spent on technology, but not much. I mean, hell, they may have killed a lot of trees because they were sending home worksheets that parents had to do uncompensated. Wasn't a lot of effort put on. There was pockets of teachers that were busting their ass. And I acknowledge you guys and thank you very much. But what I've heard, which is the majority, is some really piss poor, lackluster attempts and services in the hopes that evil, nasty DeVos was going to provide extensive waivers, and she didn't do it. Maybe you guys should have treated her nicely. Instead of excoriate her every chance she got in the education field. I didn't like her as a choice either, guys, but you sort of just don't do stuff like that and then want a favor later because people hold grudges. I mean, nasty things said about her. Some of you guys on this page said nasty things about her. I haven't. I didn't think she was a good choice, but I'm not going to sit there and disparage somebody. I don't know her. I can disagree with her, but I don't know her. Not my friend. That's why I just don't understand half of you guys out there that just feel the need to sit there and make things personal with people you don't know. Just too much emotion being spent in frivolous ways where we could be channeled to positive things. I digress. So there's an attempt out there to delay this until the start of the new school year, and then they control the data, they control the process, and then a decision will be made whether your child will be entitled to compensatory. And then guess what? Now they've just kicked the can because most of them will offer those services in the summer of 2021, unless we have COVID-20. COVID-21. Who knows? Who knows what we'll be up to by the time 2021 comes around? But it could happen. Okay, so how would you go about? Okay, so let's think through this. Guys, if you've had your IEP team say that we're going to look at whether we owe your child compensatory once we do some updated evaluation, updated assessments, and take updated data. Okay, then what you need to do is get it nailed down definitively what that data is going to look like. What are they going to use? What's it called? What's the name? How does that data look? Who's going to be taking it? Where is it coming from? All of those things. And if they say, well, we're just going to do simple probes, subjective. We're going to do that. Guys, if this is the case, then you need to trigger just a full reeval and have cognitive measures done, achievement. You need to take comparative data, do another FBA if you have a child with a behavior plan or behavior needs. You need outside people to come in, or you need internal people to do it before you can trigger an independent. But these things need to be done. But you need to sit there and sit down with your team. And I hope that all of this stuff going on in our country today, right now, helps sort of convince you that the government, the respect that the government is due, is exactly what it's getting right now, guys. I don't feel sorry and I don't feel bad for government. All right, I fight government every day. It hasn't been nice to me. It hasn't been helpful. It wants me to teach my child. But yet, what has it done for you when you've been in a pickle? When you've been in a pinch? Has it helped you? Has it babysat your child? You know how many cases I've had where they've kicked my clients out of aftercare because they're difficult? So do you see with COVID, with this whole George Floyd thing, can you sit there and now, do you have that taste in your mouth for government that is just out of control? It's a one-sided, crappy relationship. And those of you who work for government, guys, I'm sorry, but you sort of dug yourself into this hole. So you're not getting any pity from me. All of those times when you could have done something better. You could have made a better choice, but instead you abused your power and your position. You lorded over families. You were bullies in your meetings. So you're going to get what's coming to you. And I hope to God this thing doesn't fizzle out so that we can actually have some substantive change to sit there and rein in this disparity of power that is impacting all of us, impacting our minority communities more so, but impacting all of us. It's a power problem. It's not a racial problem. It's a power problem. So you go to your team, you make it very clear what does this data look like that we're going to be basing compensatory off of. You make sure that you have whatever you needed for your pre-COVID cutoff. What was the data? What was the information prior to? Because that's the other thing you need to establish, see? You need to establish where your child was functioning before the shutdown. You need to establish that before you understand how they're going to be taking data moving forward, so you can sit there and chart point A, because this is your point A. This is where my child was functioning before the shutdown. This is your point B of where your child is functioning now. Okay? You can't know where you're going unless you know where you were or where your starting point is. So you don't sit there and go, well, we're going to sit there and take data. Take data based upon what baselines, what starting point, what are we charting it from? You need to get those answers. They need to have those answers for you. Or else they're going to sit there and snicker you, snucker you, whatever you want to call it, deceive you, lie to you out of your compensatory that you're entitled to, that I believe that many, many of you are entitled to. And don't ever forget, whatever they do, you're entitled to an independent, but make sure that whatever they're doing is some kind of formalized assessment. Because if they're sitting there denying you off of guesses and I don't know. The other thing that you may want to consider is going in and getting your own psychological evaluation done, or having a retired teacher work with your child, or have a tutor work with your child so that you have your own data. I'm not necessarily saying that you turn it over to the IEP team in advance, but you have that as your ace in your pocket if their data comes up something different than what you just got. Now, the one thing that you need to be careful about is that, there's some of these assessments like achievement tests, IQ, that they can't be repeated within a certain time frame. So if you do go get something done independently, and then you find out when you're giving consent to your school that they're going to be doing an achievement in IQ, then that's where you do need to let them know that, hey, we just had this done, like a Weschler or a Kaufman, so that they can use a different company's version, so that we can get reliable results. But some of you may not want to wait to assert your rights. Special education's 24/7, guys. It's year-round. And if you have a feeling that this is what they're going to do to you, then ask for mediation. File a state complaint. File due process. If you happen to live in a state where we are, then I don't have a problem looking over your stuff and letting you know whether or not, you have enough in what you would need. You know, that's what we do. That's what I do. But I'm just saying, be very, very cautious and keep your eyes open if they're sitting there wanting to kick the can until the fall. I don't necessarily have a problem with that if they're moving forward in good faith and they truly, in their heart of hearts, want to determine where the differences are and what they need to make up. Because there's a lot of good schools out there that is their intent. But there's enough that have burned families to where I would keep my eyes open. Okay?